You could wake up and be totally blissed out and just be like, I'm ready for the day, or just totally neutral. We're always going through things emotionally. So being able to understand that it might only be an 80% yes is okay too. But as long as you're riding out the wave and you're taking time, and that's hard, especially for generators and manifesting generators, where we want to go and respond and do things because we have a lot of energy that we need to expel. We need to have that understanding that it's the divine timing and slowing us down and being considerate of our response. Is that really in alignment or not? Whereas like with the sacrals, they're very much yes, no, and if it's a maybe, then it's a no for now. It has to be a definite yes for you in your body to then align properly, and not when you are engaging in those decisions, you'll understand if it's a right answer, quote unquote, for you or a wrong answer, quote unquote, meaning if it's aligned or not. Because you'll either feel really frustrated or you'll feel satisfied. And it's really just all about alignment.
Welcome to our next episode of Soul Communication. Today, I'm excited to dive deeper into the topics of relationships, especially relationships between our partners, our kids, and how can we figure out the perfect dynamic. Each one of us has different energy blueprints, and sometimes it is helpful to understand the other person, not just from personality perspective, but maybe the energetics as well. And this is where frameworks like human design, gene key, and sometimes even Akashic records reveal for us what is underneath the surface. So I am excited to have this conversation with Lauren Fedak. She is human design and gene key practitioner and also passionate about these topics as much as I am. Welcome, Lauren.
Hi, Deanna. Thank you so much for having
Thank you
me.
for coming on and diving deeper into this whole understanding of interaction on the human consciousness level. So, before we dive in, Lauren, as you've been practicing and on your spiritual journey, what excites you today?
Oh, what excites me today. I feel like in general, like right now in this moment, it's a lot of stillness and a lot of quiet and a lot of me time. I feel very at ease. And that's what really excites me. Whenever I'm in that space of almost, I don't know what to do and I'm okay with not doing anything, that's where I'm like, oh, I can just melt into it and just exist and not really have to do. So that's what's exciting me.
I love that. That's very Taurusy. That's just
Yeah.
being the comfort of your home and finding that stability, which is exactly, I feel like, the energies of today, where
Mm.
Scorpio sun is all about this chaos and transformation. And that sometimes we just have to sit it out, just be in the presence of the now. Beautiful. So tell us more how you got into human design and gene keys, and where do you see this dynamic of parenting in terms of these really great modalities?
Yeah, absolutely. The reason or how I discovered human design was I gave birth about 5 years ago to my first child. And that was definitely the time where I felt like I really lost myself or lost more so an identity of myself. And that to me was like the darkening of the soul night, as some people say. I felt very mentally, emotionally in dark times. And I grew up Catholic, but I never really connected to any sort of religious construct of any kind. And really felt just life is what it is, and there's no meaning and nothing outside of it. And I'm just here to go through the societal emotions. I felt when I did have my child, didn't really have anybody to talk to. So I ended up scouring the internet, aka TikTok, and just started discovering all the spiritual things and all the different tools. And it really called to me. And after about 6 months of going through various types of reading, I discovered human design. And that's where for me, I felt like, oh, this is it. Like, this is something where I can find my answers, or more so be able to uproot things that I feel like are really holding me back as it relates to like limiting beliefs or how I move and interact with different individuals. To me, human design is like Mary Poppins bag. I feel like it's like the baseline. I feel like everybody who's born should have their human design chart given to them. It should be like a fundamental knowing. I feel like once I discovered human design, I could really understand how I operate and how I move through the world and how I interact with individuals, as well as my child, and understanding my children's human design charts, as well as my husband's and my family members. And I start to then contemplate and recall past experiences with them and how certain things in my chart and their chart show up and how it plays out. And it's really given me this level of acceptance, more so for myself and giving me the permission to be who I am and being able to look at the person across from me and understand and really start building that compassion muscle that I feel like is inside of every single one of us, but being able to look at it through a lens that is more transparent. And I feel like that's what human design offered me. And then going to the sister tool, the gene keys, and understanding your different genius or activation aspect, aka your purpose or your theme in life, and the love sequence that really dives deep into the relationship with yourself, which then is reflected outside of yourself, and going through those pathways and working on the how. Um, and then the Akashic Records came along after that. And I feel like it's just been this nice, beautiful bundle for me to really work with for myself, but also be able to be my authentic self and share this with other people and work with people that are drawn to such modalities and that are looking to understand themselves in relationship to who they surround themselves with. Again, their family or friends or colleagues, things like that.
Yeah, beautiful. And for those who don't know what human design is, I'll give a little background because I'm very familiar with these modalities. So, Ra, actually, the founder of human design, downloaded this information years ago in the 80s. It came as a download. I would say it was even given to him maybe by some galactic beings. So we can question that. I think there's a lot of math in it. So, it's a combination of I Ching system, which is ancient Chinese system, and combination of astrology. So for those who are into astrology, like I am, I'm passionate, it creates this chart. It's a body graph. So it's a combination of two systems. A body graph is similar kind of to the chakra system, where we usually talk about 7 centers. Here is 9 centers, and how these centers fill with energy and how they communicate among each other. And there's different channels and gateways that get created. And we know that we are unique. So not one body graph is ever the same. It's built of course, your birth chart. So the moment you were born, the time really matters because it can skew it a little bit. And then Gene Keys is actually created by Richard Rudd. Many years later, he was a master teacher of human design for several decades. And he too had a transcendental experience and download where he saw 64 gene codes and how these DNA codes, just like I Ching, the 64, matched the system. So he created a next level evolution of human design. It's not a static system, it's more, I would say, robust system where it's a compass. So you can navigate and use it for your spiritual evolution. It's been really interesting how these systems been created, and most of it is actually more of a transmission and download from their higher mind, their higher self, which is why I feel we resonate with it as truth because it does align so perfectly. I've done so many human design readings on my friends, on my clients, Jinkies a little bit as well. I like to look at all the three systems because I feel each one gives you a piece of the puzzle and you put it together. But people always resonate. Oh my God, how did you know that? So maybe walk us more in detail, Lauren, about human design. Let's start with the basics.
Mhm.
What are the 5 different energy types? I think that was the key foundation that helped me in my relationship with my husband because I'm a generator and he's a projector. And we on a very different rhythms. And so you were talking about compassion. I developed so much compassion, still developing a lot of compassion over time. What are those pieces that really help you to have that language with your loved ones?
Yes, absolutely. So there's 5 types. Ra would say that there's 4, but there's a subtype of 1. So we know it as 5. But essentially, there's 5 different auras that are operating in the world today. So there is the manifestor aura, which I think, if my stats are correct, it's around 8 or 9% of the world's makeup. So your aura is how you're moving through and how you're attracting things around you. So with the manifestor auras, they're very much closed. They're very repelling, and it's for a reason, for protection, because the manifestors are really here to initiate, to not necessarily be heavily influenced from other people, because they have the energy to be able to go and make an impact super quick and super fast and have those aha moments and not necessarily need to wait to be told what to do. There's this energy about them that doesn't want to be told what to do. So they can go out and essentially follow what's lighting them up in some way, shape, or form. Very initiator type of energy. These people probably don't have, you could probably say they have some selective hearing in them a little bit, because again, it's their energy protecting them so they can be able to receive their downloads or do follow their intuition and go and start something and build something. Whereas the generator types, there's a generator and then there's the manifesting generator. So Deanna, you're a generator, I'm a manifesting generator. And the only difference with the manifesting generator and the generator itself is that the manifesting generator has a little bit of the manifestor in them, but they still operate very much like a generator in terms of our aura is the same. It's not closed and repelling. It's completely opposite. It's open and saying, hey, come on, whoever wants to come through or whatever energy wants to come through. And it's very enveloping. So it's constantly pulling things in, because for us, we have what is referred to the life force energy, which is in our sacral center. There's 9 centers in the body graph, and there's probably going to be more in the coming years, but we can get there later. So for now, it's very much we have consistent energy in our sacral that is looking to be used. So we're really here to create things and then build things and alchemize things. So with that, you have then the projectors. The projectors, and I understand your situation with your partner, your husband, because my mom is actually a projector. And so the projectors is very much a focused aura. It's very targeted. It's an aura that is really here to orchestrate or oversee certain aspects. It wants to be able to give its opinion on things. And it really does well with small groups of individuals, actually. So I always think of them as like the conductors, the project managers, in a sense, of all the energy types. But their aura, they're really here to be able to penetrate and get to the core of the real issue or oversee exactly what's needed or give advice as to what is needed. It's not always wanted at times because it's very much everyone has a strategy, but nonetheless, very powerful aura. And projectors make up, I think, around 20% of the world's population. Generators and manifesting generators, I think, were about 70%.
The majority of the world, I would say, generators. And so generator energy is more like the doer energy. So
Mhm.
we're here to do things, execute. And I think the difference with the non-generator types, with the manifestors, the projectors, the reflectors, they don't have their own motor, right? They don't have that sacral that you were talking about. So they really good in just being teachers, being, like you said, delegators, but not so much about taking the garbage out and when needs to, or getting stuff done. And this is where the frustration, I think, on the domestic level, they just don't have that sacral. But there's a beauty in that, in learning from them how to be and how to slow down. I see projectors even as shamans. Those are the ones who always lived outside the city or the village. They would discharge the energy and be on their own. And then when they come in, they do their magic. They do a lot of amazing healing because of that one-on-one work you said, of small group. They literally able to read the feel of the other. They connect to their other person's G center and they scan them. They become them. So they're amazing healers. But then they do their work and they leave. Their centers not as defined. That we can talk about what definition means. They more open book, right? They're more open and they've healed. It's actually better for them to be on their own often. So these
Yeah.
different strategies of how to cope with your energy type.
Yes, yes. And then the final energy is that reflector energy. And that aura where it's just sampling, it's the mirror of the rest of the energy types and showing us how we're doing because all of their energy centers is open. So when there's open or undefined centers, you're really taking on everybody else's energy, those around you, whatever's transiting, that's activating different gates. So you're always changing, but that reflector energy is very much one that's feeling all the things. And I think they're like 1% of the world's
Yeah,
population.
1%. My favorite example is Michael Jackson, actually. He was a reflector. So it was beautiful because he reflected this gorgeous music to us and created this really high vibrational positivity. But yet, I think he himself had a lot of challenges in being with people because he could feel the world, all the heaviness. And I think that's why he was in Neverland with the children. Like he wanted to be surrounded by more
Innocence.
positivity.
Yeah. I still have yet to come across a reflector. I don't know if
I
you,
actually have few reflective friends. I feel in the spiritual community, the ones who are really tapped in, usually the reflectors, the projectors, of course, because of their field and how sensitive they are. The more you are interacting in that type of capacity, I feel your world starts shifting and more reflectors and projectors come into your world. At least in my experience, that's exactly what happens.
Wow. Yeah, I'm filled with manifestors and generators. Not so much manifesting generators, but a lot of generator types. My husband and my 2 daughters are all generators. And you have half the house that's emotional generator, so our authority, essentially how we make decisions, I'm one of them. My youngest is an emotional, and then my husband.
Yeah, talk a little more about that because I'm also emotional authority. What does that mean? So we figured out the 5 types. We have reflector, projector, manifester, generator, and manifesting generator. I call manifesting generator the Energizer Bunny. That's the person who like keeps going and then they crash. So that's how we identify them. Okay, and then there is the authority. Okay, so what is that?
So, what your authority is based on how you make decisions, how you should be making decisions in your life. And it's more so what I love about it. And it's something that I still try to work on to this day. And it's very difficult because we like to make decisions from our mind, or we've been taught, or we've grown up in this understanding that you have to make smart decisions. And if you have a high intellect, you'll make smart decisions. So it's very much we're going from living in your brain for making the decisions to feeling it actually in your body, or waiting to allow time to pass in order for you to feel and understand and recognize what the right decision is for you. So, for the authorities, those are the ones that have what's considered the emotional wave, depending on what is defined in your solar plex and the channel that it's resonating in. But for us, emotionals, when, for instance, let's say this podcast reached out, asked if I could be on the podcast, and you probably sat there and needed to think or have some time to be like, do I want to have this person on the podcast or I don't? It's more so like, the emotionals need to sleep on it versus making the decision really quick. For instance, and I guess a better way to describe it in contrast is that it is a sacral generator, and it's considered pure on some forms wherever you download your body graph. But the pure or the sacral generator is very much they know very quickly it's either for them or not. They probably make some vocal sounds as well. It probably comes out as like as maybe a no, or yeah, okay, let's do that. They're very much in the moment. They know in the now when it is right for them or when it's not, because they're feeling and they're listening to what's going on in their body and they're responding to it. Versus an emotional generator, we could have that same initial reaction, but it's not necessarily true in the now, because depending on where we're at in our emotional wave, because we have emotions constantly generating through us, it's just a chemical. It's constantly being generated within us. No different with females when we have our menstruation cycle. It's a chemical that constantly is being processed through. We have to understand, do I want to do this? If I feel like it's, yes, I want to do this, I want to have her on my podcast. Is this because I'm on an emotional high right now where I feel really good? And then, or is it, no, I don't want her on my podcast because maybe I'm feeling really low in my emotional wave. So being able to give yourself time depending on the decision itself. I'm not saying you wait a day to make a decision if you want a sandwich or soup, but for those bigger decisions where you might want to sleep on something or you want to give it a couple of weeks, if you're accepting a job somewhere, you're considering moving, being able to come in a place of neutrality, or kind of having the high, having the low, or however that looks for you, and being able to stabilize in your emotions to then make the decision to be asked and then have your bodily responses to go through that process as an emotional authority. So it's no truth in the now, it's considered. And you might not ever be, as an emotional, if you're an emotional authority, you might not ever know 100% because you're constantly feeling, depending on the day, you could wake up feeling totally miserable for no good reason, or no reason, I should say, at all. Or you could wake up and be totally blissed out and just be like, I'm ready for the day, or just totally neutral. We're always going through things emotionally. So being able to understand that it might only be an 80% yes is okay too. But as long as you're riding out the wave and you're taking time, and that's hard, especially for generators and manifesting generators, where we want to go and respond and do things because we have a lot of energy that we need to expel. We need to have that understanding that it's the divine timing and slowing us down, and being considerate of our response. Is that really in alignment or not? Whereas like with the sacrals, they're very much yes, no. And if it's a maybe, then it's a no for now. It has to be a definite yes for you in your body to then align properly, and not in when you are engaging in those decisions, you'll understand if it's a right answer, quote unquote, for you or a wrong answer, quote unquote, meaning if it's aligned or not. Because you'll either feel really frustrated or you'll feel satisfied. It's really just all about alignment. All of this is every tool that we engage in when we go down these roads of self discovery. It's really about self awareness and aligning to that awareness and having that come in a lot quicker. And then there's other authorities, depending if you're a projector, there could be a splenic authority where it's more of that really quiet, like quick hit of intuition, of knowing. And then you have those projectors, like my mother and my brother are G center. So the identity center, they very much need to talk out loud things. And I always used to think, God, my mom, she's always talking to herself, always, before I even knew any of this. And I used to think it was so weird. And I'm like, I'm never going to be like that. And now knowing that she literally needs to hear herself, she needs a sounding board to hear, to see if it resonates with her. And then there's other authorities as well. If it's the ego authority, very much more so, does it align with my desires? How is this benefiting me and the collective or and the tribe or and the other person? And then you have the mental authority, which is also very rare, or the environmental authority, which is in the mind, but it's more so about feeling, making the decision in the right environment. So you're still feeling in your body, but it's your mind is definitely generating the response.
Yeah, so incredible. Different ways of how we can respond to life, right? One thing that I've learned from learning about human design is that sometimes, because of the emotions that we have to process, when it's a no, it's okay to step back and wait. If you don't get a clear yes, it's probably a no. Let's just take a break. Don't push it. That's been very helpful. It's been helpful to understand that there is some sort of roller coaster ride that the emotions have to process, and it might change. That answer might change to a yes, but it's okay not to have crystal clear yes because of the emotional weights that we have to ride. So that helps to just validate our way of responding to life. Is there anything else that helps in human design? Especially, I would love to get into the whole parenting style. How do we interact knowing the energy types, knowing these authorities with our kids?
Yes, I think the one other thing I think that is foundational to understanding your human design, aside from your type and then your strategy and your authority, aka your type and how you're responding in life and where you're responding, essentially, I would say that it's the profile. I've found a lot of understanding with my profile in terms of not just how my character or how Lauren likes to live or interact with people as it relates to my profile, but also how I learn and how I eat. And I feel like it really plays out in a lot of different aspects. It really is the character that you came here to be in that type of energy, like the costume that we're wearing, so to speak. And I feel like, for instance, I'm a 2-5. So with the two, it's very much the individual or the energy that doesn't necessarily want to be seen. It wants to do its own thing, its own little corner, with the doors closed and the windows drawn, things like that. And to really be able to be in its flow and to naturally be able to fine tune its skills and do its thing and really just be isolated. And then I have the 5 part of me, and these are comprised of your top energy. So your sun and your personality side and your sun and your design side when you're looking at a body graph chart. And the 5 side of me is very much wanting to go against the status quo and to challenge and to make things or be able to call out how things can work more efficiently or better, or just have this rebellious energy in me and wants to be able to have the answers and wants to be seen. And I feel like, knowing that growing up, I was a child that I felt very shy. But I always felt like I was an introvert as like my default. But then when I'm out in crowds or amongst friends or even with strangers, really, I feel very extroverted, like I come alive. So there's this push pull that I've noticed growing up with that profile and understanding even how I learn things. I very much need to be able to see it and be able to learn it on site, but also that information doesn't fully absorb with me, more so than not, and stepping away from that information and going off and looking at it again in my own energy versus feeling pressure to be in school and to have an answer, to come up with a solution right away. I need time to marinate. So I feel like the profiles is also very key in understanding how you operate as well.
Yeah. So what I know from the system is the personality that you mentioned. It's the conscious energy, the design and the subconscious. And the conscious energy, according to Ra, actually is the soul. So it attaches to the baby in the third trimester. It's calculated almost like
Yeah.
80 days prior to the moment you're born,
Mhm.
which is incredible. So if we believe in reincarnation and souls, and obviously everyone who's listening to this podcast does, the fact that the spirit of the baby kind of lingers around, but really attaches and becomes crystallized personality that is about to be born in the third trimester is big. That understanding really helped me a lot, even to understand what was going on for me during my pregnancy and my emotions during my pregnancy and that period in time and how they could have potentially impacted the personality of my kid today. The personality is up front and the subconscious in the back. And so I think what you were just mentioning, the 2 and the 5, the hermit and the one that's out and about. I'm 1-3. So the one
I knew you
is
were a
the
one. Had a
the
feeling.
one, the foundation digger. I took this one class in human design and I liked how they explained these profiles. It was really easy to understand. So they said, imagine there's a house and you come to the house and you have that person standing outside and digging the foundation. That's the one. That's the one that's usually always the pioneer, the researcher going out and about to the edge of the universe and back, which is what I do. And then I bring the information back to tell you guys all on the podcast what I've learned or some crazy ships in Andromeda that I've been visiting. So here we have the house. Then you walk in and you have the 2, which is like Lauren. You see her looking in the mirror, the curtains closed, but she's not even paying attention to you. She's in her own little universe doing her things. Her back is to you. This is the first room in the house. And then you go up the stairs, and then there's a kitchen. And then you have myself, Deanna, making all these cakes and trying different recipes. And through trial and error, I'm like, you must try this cake because it's the best. I've gone through all these other recipes and I know they're not so great, but this one is the best. It's like the 3, which is for me in the background, but it's playing in with the 1, is always trying something new. Experimenter, constantly on myself with consciousness, with plant medicine, with things like I always say yes to life because I'm always experimenting. And only through experimentation it becomes my truth. Then we have the 4, and the 4 is on the second floor, you have that person who goes out on the porch and there's people outside walking by and waving to everyone like, hi. Everyone in the community, in the network knows them because they wave into everyone. So this is the person called the opportunist, but really the networker, the one who likes to be in certain communities and comfortable in networks of communities. So they might not be like me, who is going to go to jungles of Amazon and do crazy things because they might be a little uncomfortable with that experimentation, but they will be super comfortable in the communities they know. You should connect to this person. You should connect to this. So they always connect with everyone and they run in all these amazing circles and things like that. And then there's the 5. I feel 5 is often misunderstood. If you're in the second floor and you have the curtains closed and people walking on the street and they see a shadow and they see the shadow is wearing like a cape and they're like, oh, that's a police officer. Oh, that's the train conductor. Oh, it's this, it's that. And there's a fire on the street or some sort of incident and they're knocking on the door like, Lauren, help us. Because they think this is what you are, even though you're not any of that. And you usually out there always helping because you're always in service to others. So I feel like 1, 2, 3, they like, and their transcendental question is to understand themselves. And through understanding themselves, they share with with the world. The 4th, the 5th ones, they're all about like always helping others, always in service. And then there's the 6. The 6 is the person on the roof. So it's the person who is sitting there with binoculars and observing. So they're learning through observation. But the 6, I think, has 3 phases. First, the experimenter till age of 28. Then they observe 28 to 50, and then they come off the roof and they become a role model, as they call it. So these are the 6 different profiles.
Yes. I never heard the analogy of the 5 being a shadow and the guessing of it. And that makes total sense to me because it's very much the 5 is a projection line. So it's what people think that they see in you and not really knowing you. And even with that too, they think that they can see certain things in you, but at your heart, it's almost like you don't even recognize it. So how could they know you? But they do see you. So you're constantly being watched from a projection standpoint of others. So I really like that analogy. I'm going to use that going forward with the shadow
Yeah,
to
please
read.
do. I did classes at the International Human Design School, so it was like accredited. And this analogy really stayed with me well because it was like easy to understand the profiles. I'm sure some of this you might relate to. And then look at your human design chart. You can pull a chart free of different websites of Human Design America and look at your profile. So we know these pieces of the profile. Back to the relationships. How do we now interact with others, knowing this is what we are versus what they are?
Mhm. I think for me, from my experience, as of right now, too, the thing that I notice with my type, it's more so my aura, how I interact, and the open set I have, and the defined centers that I have, and seeing how that is playing out in real time with my little ones, and even my husband. So when me and my husband are together, he has we essentially have all of our centers defined when we are together. So he has a lot going on as it relates to his headspace. So his head, where this is more so like the inspiration that comes through the ajna, where you're conceptualizing your ideas, your thought processes, and opinions and whatnot. Mine is open except for one gate that's highlighted. I have gate 11 in the ajna. And so I'm constantly in my mind, I'm open minded, obviously, and I'm absorbing. I can watch paint dry and feel inspired by it. And for him, it's very much, he's very fixated on what's going on in his mind and from his experience and his own thought processes, that it's hard to necessarily influence what goes on there inside of, his mind. Or how he sees the world and whatnot. And he really tries to process things on what I'm saying, where for me, it's, oh, like it's everything's possible, blah, blah, blah. And he's, no, it's this, it's actually X, Y, and Z. And it's very absolute and rational. So it's interesting to see how the conversations that we have, especially in the States with the election and all that stuff. And it was very prominent this time around, and like understanding our opinions on it. That was really interesting to see that play out, and knowing the energies that we hold, where he's more influential for me and I'm absorbing and reflecting back, versus the areas where I'm more influential. But going back to the children too, is that, and because we're all generators, it's a little bit easier, I think, for me, just understanding how much energy we do carry, and how it is very much like energizer bunny status of, if we're doing all the things that we love, that it is not a lot of people sleep in this house except me, I feel like.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, with my children, though, my oldest, she is undefined in her emotional center. And this is big. I think even with relationships, this topic of relationship, it's really understanding our emotions, because really the emotions is what's driving all of our decisions, whether we know it or not, whether we're rationalizing it or not. Everything is actually filtered through your spinal cord up the limbic system in your brain, which holds all the emotional or the irrational aspects of things, that then wants to go to the prefrontal cortex, which where the logic is or the rational thinking is. So we're emotional beings, every single one of us, and we're processing thoughts through emotions. So being able to understand if you're emotionally defined with your child versus not, I feel is a huge game changer, especially at a young age, because we don't know how to process our emotions at a young age. And even as adults, I feel like we don't. I feel like we get to this age where we're 30s, 40s, 50s, and we realize, shit, I don't want to do what I'm doing right now. I feel like a lot of us we're going backwards. We're starting to understand why we are the way we are, and the deconditioning and whatnot. So we're all going through this process. We're all dealing with our emotions and trying to process them. But my hope is obviously being able to understand myself to help my children so they can live more authentically and in alignment as long as possible. So when I see that my child has an undefined emotional solar plex and I have a defined, I know that I'm constantly influencing her or triggering her in some aspect, or she's feeling what I'm feeling. So it's very much checking myself when I do feel like I'm in a rut, or maybe I'm stuck, or maybe I'm just irritated, for something that maybe triggered me, or again, no apparent reason. And knowing how I come off to her, because she can sense, she can pick up on, are you okay? Are you not? Are you angry? Are you sad? So understanding the sensitivity there, and also understanding that she has certain gates in her solar plex that I know then are defined and that trigger me. And I can see how this energy is playing out more so in the detriment. Like she has the one gate, it's gate 39, and it's more about provoking. I think it's like the provocateur or something like that. And at the detriment of it, it's very much like it's looking to be stimulated by emotion, to be rattled and to be like woken up in some way. And I can see how, if I'm thinking from my logical mind, I can see how that could be playing out, how that's a possibility when I'm triggered looking at her. And then we can go into the whole conversation of, at the end of the day, our children are reflections of us, as within, so without. So we're constantly being shown all these things, but to be able to apply some tactical evidence of it, and that's what I feel human design is, to understand where you're more susceptible and where you're more influential, has been really helpful with understanding emotionally how I come across to my children, and how my youngest daughter, how she is an emotional, and how her spikes in emotion go up and down. She is a tribal wave. How she doesn't really get affected with how I'm feeling. She's more neutral because she's in her own emotions and not necessarily being absorbing mine, whereas my other daughter does. Whereas my other daughter, you would consider more emotional outwardly because she's experiencing all the things, whereas emotionals, we have gotten really good at, one, suppressing our feelings. But I feel like as we go through this process, we become more emotional, but we seem more cold, or we don't necessarily cry when you're crying unless it really resonates with us. So that's how I've seen the dynamic play out in lifetime in my household.
That's fascinating. For me too, human design has served such an incredible tool in understanding relationships. So I don't know if you've ever tried to overlay the charts together. So we learned, for instance, that my projected husband has what's called nowhere to go with all the kids, all the centers defined or filled with energy. And what that means for a projector, that if everything is good, is great, like they're super close and beautiful. But the minute the kid's not listening, let's say, so they resistant, and that resistant energy creates almost like electrical circuit. So we have this terminology, I got short circuited, and like they do it to him and he gets exhausted. If he spends a day with them, even though he loves them so much, that short circuit really exhausts the energy because it's like literally nowhere to go. For relationship, I found, because my husband and I have what's called eighth one. So it's like exactly what you do. All the centers defined, but one is open on top. So eighth one, I feel, is a healthy way because even if you have a conflict, you still have one center where energy can release out. So for us, of course, it's through consciousness and all the consciousness work that we're doing together. Even if on the 3D level we have a disagreement or whatever kerfuffle, we always able to consciously later, after the energy time tames down, to discuss it, work through it, and so that worked for us well. And then with my stepkid, I have what's called 7-2 work to do. Are you familiar with work to do? There is two centers that are open, but there's somehow the energies are not fully aligning, and it's like also karmic in some ways. And I do feel that. I do constantly have work to do. He's the only person who really triggers me when we all together. And I'm observing the triggers too. I probably should do what you do and go deeper into like specific gates and specific things that are triggered in
Mhm.
that moment. So that helps to get that picture and understanding of our interactions and our relationships and why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling after I'm spending X amount of time with my kids, even though I love them so much, because they might be too much for my system.
Yeah, I totally, and this is where it's going to be interesting for me to observe as my children get older as well, because when we're all together, like with me and Chris, so we are nowhere to go. Is that's the 9-0, the nowhere to go, and even with the children too, we're all, there is nowhere to go with all of us if we're doing a picture chart. But I feel it's interesting because I almost, people ask, oh, are you going to have a third child? And all the things. And then the human part of me is, no, absolutely not. I'm 34. I don't want to have another child. I don't want to do the diapers, all the things. But another part is very much like, I'm so good with our unit. Like I feel complete. Like there's that other aspect to having the security and all the energy. It just feels tight, like a tight unit. And I'm good with that. But when I feel like when we start to observe our children getting older, and luckily I talked to my husband about human design, and not that he really understands it in fully. He gives me the space, he lets me talk about it. He's really susceptible to listening and hearing me out and understanding that at the end of the day, like he knows that I'm the one in the family that's pulling him along to like evolve in this way, where he pulls me in this way to evolve. He's a 5-1, and he is very much, he's got gate 44, which is in his personality sun. And that's the gate of alertness. It's very primitive. It's primal. It's assessing patterns from the past and whatnot. It's a very cyclical aspect to it. So I see how that shows up super, like, a lot for him, and how he's very much his traditional, like, if you go into the gates itself, you know how they have 6 layers or so, and the bottom layer is like your base. So like understanding that he's very much a baseline when it comes to that personality sun, which makes up 70% of him. He's very grounded in this plane, in the physical aspect of things, whereas I'm on the complete opposite. I think it goes up to a 5. I don't think it goes to 6, but I'm on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. So me and him have this extreme difference, but we really are good at balancing. I feel like it's worked out because of our capacity to listen and to hold the space and respect, even if we don't understand it. So I feel like that's good, but it's going to be a challenge with the girls because, like, even as they grow, understanding where we're at with our values right now and how we parent, like, that's an ongoing discussion all the time. And like looking back, at least for me, looking at our charts to understand how we are and how our parenting evolves over time with our chart over time as we become more conscious of or more aware of these energies and catching ourselves in live time. I'm looking forward to seeing how our dynamic shifts, being all defined. But then there's another part of, no, it's just like freeze time. I'm not ready to push the boundaries at all to see how this is going to all play out because we got a lot going on.
Yeah, that is a lot. Where does gene key come in here? Because you mentioned it about the genius.
Yeah.
I think we really covered human design as much as we can. So Richard Rod opened a doorway for us with his compass. So maybe walk us through, why would someone want to look at gene keys at all?
For me, so your gene keys take certain elements of your human design. And how I've looked at this, at least where I'm at right now, and how I study it and how I help other people, it's very much human design is the foundation. It's all the tools in the toolbox. Here's all the energies at play. Here's what's activated. Here's what's not. And then looking at it, overlaying it with gene keys gives us pathways or certain sequences of contemplation. Richard Rudd is very big on contemplation, which is hard for some, especially if you have more of an active or like strategic brain, or you're more logical and you want the how or the steps on how to do something. Gene keys can seem very opposite to that. It's very passive. It's over time when you're discovering these things, but essentially it's walking through your incarnation cross first, which is the 2 gates at the top of your chart on your personality side and human design, and the 2 gates on the design side of human design. So it's taking your theme in life, as I like to say, because it's, when you think of incarnation cross, they say it's your purpose, but you can have many purposes throughout your life and it shows up in different ways. So it's more so the theme that's reoccurring in your life, that this and these 4 gates, these 4 energies or gene keys makes. So being able to look at each gate on a deeper level. There's things called the shadow state, where we're acting more in like a detriment or the low vibrating aspect of this energy. Then there's the next level of the gift, how this energy shows up in the gift state or the gift frequency, and then how this gift shows up in the city state, which is basically godlike state, where people can have glimpses of this experience, but not necessarily, at least from my own understanding, you're not living in the city all your life because you would be transcending at that point. So we're really here to work our way from the bottom, aka shadow, up to the city, and over time, over a course of time. So understanding that your incarnation cross, or the genius sequence or activation sequence, looking at those specific energies and the frequencies and understanding where you're showing up in your shadow at this point in time, and then in the past too, because all of this is uprooting elements in yourself, where, or memories in yourself, which is hard for people to do as well when you're going through this contemplative process, because by bringing up memories, especially not so nice memories or not good memories, it's, you start to relive those, and you start to then not want to, or either start to identify and take on the responsibility or the accountability of the choices that were made, whether it's for you or by you, depending on where that maturity level is throughout your life. So it's not for the weak of heart or the faint of heart, this process. You have to definitely be pretty serious about it to actually see results or to see how this is playing out and accelerate on your self-discovery path, who you truly are. So with the activation sequence, it's understanding your theme in life or your message or your brand, how you present yourself to the world. And that's more so sinking into your authenticity, how I've looked at it. Like really being like, okay, I really identify with this. I can see how this is showing up. This is truly who I am. And then you have other elements in your chart, obviously, that play into the makeup of your human self or like yourself as of now. It has nothing to do with your essence or your spirit or your soul in turn, because at that point we are none of this. It's our essence is playing out through these energies. So it's more so with the activation sequence, dropping into authenticity, and then it works through. It has a sequencing called a love sequence, which is all about relationships. It's more so relationships to your first and foremost, and then you can see how it's playing out externally for you, whether that be romantic relationships, platonic relationships, familial relationships. There's also an element in that love sequence where it goes through points in time, whether that's the puberty years, the adolescent years, and really the infant years, the child years, where you're 0 to 7. That's working it all the way back up to your core wound. And your core wound is what's considered your vocation. Your vocation, you can think of your job, but it's more so just the constant work that you're doing throughout your life. So, for instance, my core wound in my Venus sequence or the love sequence is gate 46 in my human design. And gate 46 is really all about embodiment. It's really about going from seriousness to delight. So from the shadow to the city state. And I'm constantly working at living in my body and living in the experience and not living life so seriously. Like these are things that I've started to realize over time, and how the relationships with my kids are teaching me that as well, to not live life so seriously, because I think in the beginning of my life, I definitely grew up in a household where you have to do X, Y, and Z. It's not a life where you can be curious and you can be playful. Like it's one of those things where you just do it. That's just what you do. So I can see how my shadow state of seriousness has played out through my entire life. And I feel like even with the work that I do, how the way that I work with people, it really isn't, it's not super rigid. It's not super serious in terms of like it has to be black and white, because it isn't black and white. It's very much in the gray space, and it's very flexible and very much playful, more so in the feminine versus in my from 0 to 30. I feel like I was really living in that masculine, that very structured, that very seriousness. So it's working it, going through the love sequence, being able to understand the different energies that is contributing to that vocation or that core wound, working yourself backwards. And it's just bringing up the memories. It's helping you unprogram yourself or to start to accept certain aspects and really just reflective. And then it has the final sequencing, which is more so the pearl or the prosperity. And the prosperity is the unfolding of the work that you did through your activation or your genius, and then the love sequence as well. And the prosperity is the outcome of those two sequencing, in my opinion, how I've experienced it. And a lot of the things that I've experienced with this so far, and it's a struggle for sure, considering my energy type, is I have in my prosperity in the pearl itself is gate 52, which is the gate of stillness. It's very much in action and not doing. It's very much like being patient and resting and being in the feminine of receiving versus being in the masculine of doing. And all my energy wants to do is go, being a manifesting generator. So it's a constant like understanding of the timing of all of these energies and when it takes place and when you're being invited in to do so, when you're meant to be initiating and projecting out, or how that's generating. So the sequencing and taking those different elements in your chart, they take some of your Mars and your design side, your Mars gate, that's the core wound. And then there's some in the moon, and then there's some, I believe, in the Mercury aspect or the North Node. Like there's different, they're not all of the gates that you see on your chart, in your human design chart. There's just specific ones, and some in your Jupiter as well, that's placed in this massive sequence of sorts to start your journey backwards and really inwards to then work yourself out.
Yeah. Powerful stuff. It
Yeah.
can seem overwhelming for someone listening to this. And, oh my God, there's so many sequences, there's so much work. And it is work, right? I think we're trying to say that this whole process of spiritual evolution is deconstruction to understand ourselves. We did not learn this when we were kids, tapping back into who we are and how we operate, how this vehicle operates, how our emotional states operate. Why do we choose the specific personality crystal and certain way of expressing ourselves? So connecting all the dots takes time, but it can be like a guided process. So this is when I think you go and work with someone like Lauren or myself or other human design gene key practitioners. If you feel like you're looking on this and you're like, what is this? I know with human design, it was more attainable for me, and gene key in the beginning it was like, wow, there's a lot, but it's a beautiful compass too. It can help to go deeper into understanding of the shadows at least. And I found that to be really interesting, to the progression of the frequencies of the shadow and the gift and the siddhi. Just because we were born in a certain way and we have a certain design, that's just, like you said, foundational base. We are perfect in my mind. We are angelic beings, and we are just coming back home to our original state, which is siddhi, which is the superhuman, which is the ultimate potential. And the transcendence that you're speaking about, I feel we are meant to live that today on earth. Ascended masters back in those days would reach a certain transcendence and they would leave their body. They were done with this initiation process. But I think the game is different now. The game is to embody everything and to get to transcendence and live that in this reality game. Is it a hard game? Yeah, it is. There's a lot of pieces here, as you can see, and a lot of nuances of self. And I know you, Lauren, you've been doing this for a while. I've been doing this for a while. I'm still learning. I feel I'm still very novice. The amount of intricacy in all of it can be complex. But we hope that today we give you a little bit of understanding that these frameworks are helpful. They do give you a foundational basis, at least where to go. If you feel like you're stuck, you're not understanding yourself, you're like, where do I expand to? There's a map now that someone created, someone downloaded, and it can be useful. Do you apply all of it to your life? That's your free will. You choose how you want to take that journey. So beautiful. Thank you, Lauren, for sharing all that wisdom. If someone wants to reach out and maybe have intercession with you or go further, how can they find you?
So you can visit me on my website. It's just laurenfedak.com. I also am on Facebook and Instagram. I'm not heavily using social as much, but I'm trying to. Again, my little hermit side really wants to get out there. So you can connect with me there. I have a Facebook page, Lauren Fedak, and then also an Instagram as well. And then if you're interested in just hopping on, just having a conversation, just to understand a little bit more before going through with anything, you can always just book a clarity call. Otherwise, I have a simple chart analysis that we can do. Or if you prefer the Akashic Records, I can do that. Or if you prefer both, I do a combo of all that. But I really try to make it custom to what you're looking for after that clarity call. And then I do have a program that is for 6 weeks, and it's more so for that embodiment piece. So for those that have been on the human design journey for a while, that really want to start now living their design versus taking it from the intellectual and now dropping into the body with it all. So it's all on my website. It's all there.
Beautiful. And embodiment is key. I highly recommend for anyone doing any type of work to take the frameworks, take all the knowledge, and then live it. And I love that you do that. I do that too. Because if we don't walk the walk, how I would expect, because then it stays all in the mind. Like I'm learning this, but I'm not really applying the knowledge. So integration and anchoring all of that into the change and transformation you want to see in your evolution does matter.
Yeah,
Again, thank you,
absolutely.
Lauren, for sharing all of this with us. And thank you, everyone, for being here.
Of course. Thank you so much, Deanna.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode. You can visit my website, dianadivine.com, where I'm now offering a special Quantum Master Creator free ebook that will help you to create the conscious dimensional life that you want. I'm also offering other programs, one-on-one sessions such as Quantum Healing Hypnosis and Quantum Crystalline Soul Healing to help you in your vibrational alignment. On sourcelanguage.org, I'm offering a digitized course that is self-paced to open you to the divine gift of light language. I'm Deanna Divine, and keep connecting with your higher self.